Meet the new neighbors. For many residents of Montana and Wyoming, they're grizzly bears. Hi there, everyone. I'm Jeff, and this is Plain English. This is where you get to improve your English by listening to stories about current events and trending topics. We often, not always, but often, pick stories from the English-speaking world. And that way, you get to learn some new words and also learn about the culture and places where the language is spoken. Well, today's story is about bears and humans in the American West. The grizzly bear was almost extinct half a century ago, but the population is rebounding. And today, that is threatening ranchers, farmers, and residents near the bear population. Today, you'll learn how bears and humans are learning to live together. In every plain English lesson, we also show you how to use an important expression or phrasal verb in English. Today, that is pass down. So in the second half of the audio lesson, you'll learn how to use that. This is lesson 644, so you can find the full transcript and all the lesson resources at plainenglish.com/644. Our producer, JR, has made sure of that. I think we're ready to get going. Let's do this. Last year, America's Endangered Species Act turned 50 years old. This 1973 law aims to protect plant and animal species that are at risk of extinction. It's illegal in the U.S. to hunt or capture any animal on the list, and government agencies are required to protect the critical habitat of these animals and plants. One of the first animals to make the endangered species list was the grizzly bear. Before European settlers arrived in the Americas, grizzly bears roamed from present-day Canada through present-day Mexico. There were so many grizzly bears in California that the state put the animal on its state flag in 1846. But there are no grizzly bears in California today. Hunting wiped out 98% of the population in North America, including all the bears in California. Fans of conservation can cheer this, however. The Endangered Species Act appears to have worked for the grizzly bear. The populations are recovering in the western states of Montana and Wyoming. In this area, there were just 136 bears when the Endangered Species Act was passed. Now, there are 1,000. Where once the grizzly bear populations stayed only in the most remote mountain areas, they're now in valleys and prairies where they used to roam. So is that the happy ending to the story? Not quite. As the bears move into new territory, they are increasingly coming into conflict with humans. The bears, which can weigh 400 kilograms, are hungriest and therefore most aggressive in the fall when they store up fat for the winter. And last fall, several hikers, hunters, and residents were killed in grizzly bear attacks in the U.S. and Canada. Ranchers say grizzlies threaten livestock. Residents are afraid for their pets and children. One woman was mauled by a bear as she was running on a street. And just as the bear population has grown, the human population in this area has grown too. So humans and bears have to learn to live together. The key is to condition bears not to expect rewards in areas populated by humans. Like humans, bears pass culture and information down from generation to generation. If a bear gets in the habit of eating trash from a dumpster, the bear will teach its cubs to search for food in trash containers. By the same token, bears that stay away from humans teach their cubs to do the same. So it's best not to give bears any rewards in areas where humans live. Electric fences can keep bears away from areas they don't belong. Farmers and ranchers use the fences to secure their cattle, poultry, beehives, and other animals. Schools also install electric fences around the perimeter just in case. Homeowners protect their vegetable gardens that way too. Property owners use bear-resistant garbage cans and high, secure fences around trash collection areas. Pet owners are encouraged to put away their bird seed and dog food. Bears also like to eat fallen fruit, so owners of fruit orchards are encouraged to pick their apples and other fruit quickly. During harvest season, local volunteers pick up fallen apples so as not to leave an easy meal on the ground. Dead livestock can attract bears too. Dead livestock is now removed to special composting facilities. Ranchers and families alike are getting dogs trained to protect against bears. The dogs can be outfitted with spiked collars that can injure a bear if the bear attacks the dog. Even with these protective measures in place, bears sometimes do wander into populated areas. When that happens, bear management specialists step in. Their goal is to teach the bears to stay away. One thing they do is called aversive conditioning. They fire beanbags and rubber bullets at the bears. Those don't do the bear any harm, but the goal is to annoy them so they stay away. If a bear gets trapped in a populated area, they'll tranquilize the bear and move it to a remote area. As one specialist said, you don't want bears to get a taste of the good life. Euthanasia is a last resort, but it does happen. Bears that attack people are later euthanized. Back in episode 294, I told you about my trip to Yellowstone National Park. It's stunning out there, the most beautiful landscape I've ever seen. And remote. I went on a hike in a neighboring park, and I definitely took bear spray, and I attached a bear bell to my backpack. I didn't mind taking that on a hike, but I don't think I'd want to carry bear spray every time I went out for a walk. Pass down is a phrasal verb that means to give something to someone who follows you, usually the next generation. You can pass down a thing, but you can also pass down a behavior, an idea, or a set of beliefs. Let's start with things. In some families, there are valuables that each generation passes down to the next. For example, a man might own a watch, and he might pass that down to his son. And when the son has kids of his own, he might pass the watch down to his own kids. So this is an example of an item that gets passed down from generation to generation. Now, it doesn't have to be through multiple generations, and it can even skip a generation. The important thing is that one person gives something to someone who follows. My grandmother passed a painting down to me when she died. She knew I liked it, so she passed it down to me. Think about what you have in your house. Do you have anything you'd like to pass down to another generation? It could be in your family or someone else that's meaningful in your life. Blood relation is not a requirement to use pass down. And the person doesn't have to die first. You can pass something down to the next generation, even if you're still alive. Think back to the example of the watch. Let's say you have a watch that has been in your family for a long time. You might pass the watch down to your son on his 18th birthday. That works even if you're still alive. So now let's talk about intangible things. Here's a really common one, a recipe. This recipe has been passed down from generation to generation. A recipe is an idea. So when an idea is passed down from one generation to the next, the older person teaches the idea to someone who follows. A recipe that has been passed down through the generations means kids learn to make the recipe as they get older. They then teach their own kids years later. Traditions can be passed down. Perhaps it's a tradition for a family to go to church on Christmas Eve. That tradition can be passed down to future generations. Beliefs can be passed down too, and this can be within a family or within an entire culture. A lot of people are surprised to know how many Americans own firearms. There are more guns than people in the US, and the vast majority of the guns are legal. I don't own a gun, and I don't want to. But in many parts of the US, the belief in owning a firearm for personal protection is passed down from generation to generation. The US is a massive country. It spans a continent. And in the early days of the Republic, and actually before we became one country, there was no 911. There was no police force. There were few cities. The law was not there to protect you. It was a very remote, very sparsely populated mass of land. And so in those times, a family would own a gun for hunting and for personal protection. And that belief, that value, has been passed down from generation to generation. And that's why now in 2024, the belief and the value of owning a firearm for personal protection is so strong in the US, whereas it's almost unheard of in other developed countries, actually almost anywhere else in the world. Now, of course, we do have 911. Now we do have police. Now the country is not as dangerous as it once was. If anything, now the danger comes from the guns. But the belief in gun ownership for safety and protection has been passed down from one generation to the next. The grizzly bear was almost extinct in the western part of North America. For years, people just thought there were enough animals out there and we could hunt and kill them with abandon. That belief was passed down through the generations until the buffalo and grizzly bear and other species were either extinct or almost extinct. But beliefs can change, and now the grizzly bear population is rebounding thanks to laws that protect endangered species. Humans are learning to live with a growing bear population. Bears are learning to live with humans. Bears are fast learners. If they learn they can get a full meal by breaking into a dumpster and eating trash, the bears will pass that behavior and knowledge down to their cubs, like a grandmother passing down a cherished recipe. But if the bears learn to stay away from humans, they'll pass that behavior and knowledge down to their cubs. And that's what we want, right? Well, that's all we have for you here at Plain English today. I hope you enjoyed today's episode. Remember, every episode comes with a free transcript online at plainenglish.com. You can find the transcripts by episode number. So today's episode was number 644. So just go to plainenglish.com/644, and that's where you'll find the transcripts and all the words you heard in today's lesson. We'll be back on Thursday with a new story. See you then.